So hello, everyone. Welcome to this short podcast or Q&A session. On this episode, I'd like to welcome Mr. Mostafa Elsagezli. Mr. Mustafa is the Program Director of Bina Business Incubator in Istanbul. He was previously the General Manager of the Libyan Program for Reintegration and Development. He was also the Chair of the Board of Directors of SESRIC, the Statistics, Economics, and Social Research Center for Islamic Countries. Before the Arab Spring, he was the chairman of Itqan Computers, one of the leading technology firms in Libya. Mr. Mustafa holds an MBA from the University of New York, Tirana, and a Bachelor of Engineering from Utah State. Welcome, Mr. Mustafa.
Thank you, Mohammad. Happy to be with you.
Perfect. Mr. Mustafa, if we could start with the Arab Spring. As you've played an active role in the 17th of February revolution in 2011, can you explain to us how technologies like social networks may have played a role in the success of the revolution?
Technologies, especially social media, had a very important role in connecting, if we can call them revolutionaries or people who wanted to bring down these dictatorships and oppressive regimes. And it was an opportunity. It eased the process of connecting people, sending messages, networking, building communities. And because most of the people who participated in these revolutionaries were, or at least a big number of them were from the well-educated elite, it was a very helpful tool to use social media, Facebook, Twitter, and so on to connect. So I think the governments or the leaders at the time, like Gaddafi or Mubarak or Zain al-Abidin, did not really understand how this social media and technology worked well because of maybe the age gap or their backgrounds, mostly military leaders. But we understood it ourselves. So it was, first of all, it expanded the space of freedom. So a lot of the posts, comments opened a gap inside the regime, so people could communicate, people could express themselves while they were not able to do this on the streets or face-to-face. So it had a very important role in connecting and expanding the freedom of speech.
Yeah, great. And then just to follow up, so after the revolution and the downfall of the old regime, obviously, many positives came by as Libya had its first election since almost the 60s, and then there was an expansion in freedoms. However, one of the consequences was many of the youth that were in civilian society or civilian members joined, became militarized in a sense, or joined a militia or carried a weapon. And I know that you were like the head of the program for reintegration and development, trying to reintegrate these youth or these individuals back into civilian life and requalify them for today's economy. How do you see technology or startups or incubations playing a role in reintegrating these people back to civilian life?
Actually, it is very important to know that these people became militarized or held weapons for starting for a reason, to defend themselves, their cities, their towns, their family against a dictator, military dictator who was willing to crush everyone. So out of self-defense, this is how it started.
Yeah.
But again, by time, things changed. After the revolution, it is estimated that 20 pieces of weapons were spread all over Libya. Gaddafi had a huge,
as in 20 million,
huge depots of weapons that many of the observers at the time thought that this was enough to take over Africa. if he had the man to do so. And this is maybe why he called himself King of Kings of Africa, because he knew he had enough weapons to take over Africa. So weapons spread. I myself, because of my background, my academic business background, I thought that this was the biggest challenge that will face us. Revolutionaries, we brought down a regime. It was time to build a new system, build the state institutions to make sure that the goals we started the revolution for are accomplished. So good governance, economic development, good life for the people, prosperity for the people. That the main challenge will face us was spread of militias and spread of arms. So I myself, I proposed to the Prime Minister at the time in October that we should have a commission for reintegration. We called it at the time Warriors Affairs Commission. I was heading it. Later, it was renamed as the Libyan Program for Reintegration and Development. During this program, we interviewed 160,000 militants or people who were holding arms all over Libya. And the surprise, which was a good surprise, that 42%, we gave them few options: joining the military, police, or starting your own business, or continuing your education, scholarships, vocational training, or employment in the government. So 42% of them selected the option to start up their own business, which was a very, positive surprise. We launched a program, we called it Ambition, in Arabic, طموح, in coordination with the USAID, in coordination with the Islamic Development Bank and a Dutch NGO called Spark. And the goal was to launch 5,000 small SMEs, establish incubators, train mentors. So we were trying to build the ecosystem in order for such a project to succeed, because as you know, before the revolution, there was no private sector. Gaddafi and the state controlled everything. There was no, private companies, initiatives, and so on. Very small private sector, let's say. So I think, and I'm still sure, that startups, small business, especially now with the new technologies, are the solution to the spread of arms. So moving young people or moving militants from their brigades, militias, to starting up their businesses, this is very attractive to them. Most of them are ambitious, courageous. As a proof, they hold arms and they are willing to fight. So this is a sign that they are ambitious entrepreneurs. It is our goal to move them from being ambitious with their arms to being ambitious into business and development and startups. So I really believe it's the solution for many of our problems, including the spread of arms.
Wow, this is great. I guess right now, so you currently being the director of a business incubator called Bina, which is well known in Libya and the Middle East. It's headquartered in Turkey. When you're looking at it from the other perspective, not the government perspective, what emerging technologies are you most excited about that you think these revolutionaries or freedom fighters can basically learn or use to get ahead? I know that you're very that you like crypto a lot. I was on your LinkedIn page, and you seem to be a big fan of cryptography. I don't know if there are other technologies you think could be valuable for these youth.
I think for youth in general, not only armed groups, members or revolutionaries, for youth in general in our region, and I'm talking about now not only Libya, we have our initiatives in Somalia for Syrian refugees, in Libya, we're starting a program in Niger with the Yemenis. So especially fragile and conflict-affected states, I think technology, latest technologies can help these youth and these states to rebuild their institutions, to rebuild their economy, provide young people with jobs. What technologies? I can just give you a small example. For example, some of the projects that we incubate and we train are of either trade or industry or services, let's say services, different services in tourism or in different areas, for example, health services. A small click we give them, it transfers the company or the startup in its revenues, marketing, jobs to sometimes double and triple. Wow. Adding e-commerce to them, for example. Many of these small businesses don't have a website, don't have an e-commerce platform, don't have a mobile app. So just adding these small techniques, new technologies to them expands their marketing, their revenues, opens jobs, opens branches. One of the companies we had in Libya, it had no e-commerce whatsoever, and it was very successful in the services it provides to its community. Through e-commerce, they were able to replicate their project, which was actually like a home baking project where widows, ladies, young ladies cook at home and they sell their product to their community. So this business through e-commerce delivery, e-payment was replicated in many other cities. So it opened huge number of jobs and the revenue went, dozens of times higher. So technology can play a great role, specifically in this area, plus many other areas.
Very interesting, very interesting. And then also the example you mentioned with the baked goods. So in a country like Libya, as you know, most of the employment comes from the government sector. So this, number one, gives people an entrepreneurial opportunity to pursue for extra income on top of their government salary, and slowly build a culture to move away from government salaries and the stagnation and the bureaucracy that it could affect in terms of culture. Yeah.
Mr. Mohammad, 20% of the Libyan people are government employees. Wow. The government sector spends from the oil revenues around maybe 28 to 30% of the oil revenues goes as salaries. The vast majority of these people who are government employees, they don't have a daily job. They are a burden over the government. So wow. They are getting salaries, and in the same time, they are a hurdle in front of public administration reform and good governance. So it is a real challenge for Libya for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So speaking about challenges, so emerging technologies like AI or machine learning or cryptography, cryptocurrencies, etc., they're usually seen to have a positive impact. But when you look at a country like Libya, which is basically an oil-based economy, do you fear that some technologies like clean tech or solar or solar power, basically solar-based cars, may have actually a negative impact on Libya's development?
If we were smart enough, or if we use the resources of oil that are available now in a smart way, I think we have no issue at all. Actually, these new technologies would bring more benefit to Libya because, as you know, Libya is part of the big Sahara. This is a hot spot for solar energy. For example, Morocco now has a huge solar energy project, and they are working on exporting energy to Europe. So Libya could do the same. Libya could do the same with this hotspot, the Great Sahara. So there is no fear if we plan from now how to benefit from other Libyan competitive advantages. Libya also can be the gateway to Africa, for Europe, for Asia, for other countries. It is its location on the Mediterranean, 1.5 million square meters. So we have a lot of other resources, but of course, it would be a great advantage if we can use the oil and gas revenues for the next few years to build our infrastructure, to invest in such new technologies.
Awesome, great. Just to wrap, thank you so much for your time. But just to wrap all of this up, so Libya being a conflict-affected state, and you also work with other countries as well, as you mentioned, Somalia or in Syria. Are you positive of the role that technology can play in rebuilding these countries?
I really believe we have a great opportunity with the new technologies, actually to rebuild our institutions, our economy, even our social system, taking advantage of these new technologies. Else, if these new technologies were not available, maybe state building would take us, ages. But because of these technologies, I can give you quick examples. Mm-hmm. For example, our financial system, banking system in Libya, we have a huge problem. It is a failed system. It is corrupted. It has huge bureaucracy. Through implementing fintech, we can, in a short period of time, transfer it completely. Coming to issues like politics and elections and conflicts and so on, through e-elections, through blockchain, through new technologies, you can easily hold fair elections for everyone without having any issues of security. A small example I would like to give, we had an entrepreneurship program for Libya in 2020, but because of the war, we decided to do it in areas where there is no conflict. Mm-hmm. But then suddenly when Corona came, we said, well, let's do it online. When we decided to do it online, we found out that, well, why should we restrict it to the areas where there is no conflict? Let's have it all over Libya, since it's going to be online. Even people who are in an area that is affected by the conflict can participate. And this is what we did. So we had participants from all over Libya, applicants from all over Libya. It came to a certain point where people would enter to the training and incubation program in their cars, 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers from their home, to be away from the fighting and to make sure they are part of this training. So technology brings huge opportunities, can be a solution, can help countries to rebuild their institutions, economy, even their social structure.
Great. Thank you so much for your insights, Mr. Mustafa. I have benefited a lot from this discussion, and I know everyone back at ISID and McGill will benefit a lot. Thank you so much, sir, and have a great day.
Thank you, Mohammad, for the opportunity, and all the best.